Let me shift gears a little bit, because one thing you said cued something for me, which is, there are people whose ambition is going to be to start a large community. Alternatively, there are companies looking for consumer insights specifically from lead users, maybe where the metric is very different, about having smaller communities are just fine because what they're doing is research or insight from key users. Is that accurate to say that?
It is accurate to say that, but I'm not sure that this is the right way to do it. You see, I think that with social media programs, communities and all of that, you truly have the opportunities to transform the way you manage your business process. So doing small communities to get customer insights is what? Is taking the concept of focus groups online.
Applying it,
right? But now with social media, you actually have the opportunity to talk to all of your customers, including the detractors. Why wouldn't you do that? Shift the paradigm. Don't just talk to the ones that are the most vocal or the ones that you're paying to give you feedback or something like that. Talk to all of them, including the one you don't like. You can now.
Right. And you see those communities become self-regulating in some ways as well.
That's right.
It's one of the main objections I hear to that is, well, I can't let my detractor customers talk to my supportive customers, or I'm worried about kind of diluting my brand or diluting my message, or et cetera.
But they already are.
Right.
Your detractors are already talking bad about you.
Right.
Somewhere else, right? So why not bring them in an environment where you also have a lot of positive people talking about you? And whether you like it or not, they may form communities around you somewhere else. I mean, look at the TiVo community, right? If you have a TiVo, the TiVo community is the best place to find how to hack your TiVo machine to do things that you never thought possible, right?
Yeah.
The TiVo community got created outside of TiVo. TiVo had nothing to do with it. And yet, I'm sure that for TiVo, it is one of the main sources of product innovation.
They then kind of started supporting and encouraging
exactly
that
right.
community.
Yeah.
That's a great point. When do you look at starting a community versus going out to already existing places where that conversation is occurring? How do you draw that line for people?
Well, the first thing you need to do is really need to take an inventory of the ecosystem. Where are your customers hanging out? And are there communities where they already hang out? And if so, go there. Don't try to bring them on your turf. I mean, what's the benefit of that? Or if there are a few communities that they hang out, but not really very concentrated around a passion that you think you might help them kind of concentrate around, then bring them into your own community, but still affiliate with those other communities. Make sure that they can take information from here over to the other places where they are, or vice versa.
Right. So we did talk about underfunding, or kind of looking at community in such a way that kind of almost ensures that it's not going to succeed. What are some other challenges that traditional businesses are having when it comes to, because you do a lot of work going into companies that have already deployed communities and they're not living up to their promise.
Yeah.
What are some other commonalities between companies that have kind of had unsuccessful or less than optimal results with community?
Well, I think most companies who are failing are companies that don't understand the fundamentals of community, right? There's only 4 forces in communities that have a positive feedback loop effect. The successful communities, you put them out there and all of a sudden, boom, they take off, right? And so those 4 forces are content. If somebody comes to a community, there's nothing there, they'll never come back. The second one, of course, is the members themselves, right? Because the more members, the more content you have, and the better the content, the higher the value to the members. The higher the value to the members, the more they're going to tell their friends, the more members you're going to have,
content themselves,
and then you're going to have the user-generated content, right? So that's a positive feedback loop. The other one is the member profiles, right? As you get more members, more content, at some point in time, you will want to have the ability to match, automatically content and member recommendations to members based on their profile. Right? And not just a static profile, not just a profile that says I'm from Belgium and I know how to do this and I'm interested in that, but also the dynamic profile, like Amazon. What have I bought? What have I done?
And who are you congregating with?
That's exactly.
Groups exactly.
Because the more you're matching good stuff to me, the higher the value, the more I'm going to tell for my friends, the more content you're going to have. It's the last one is transactions, right? The easier it is for me to do the transactions that I'm there to do. Okay, the higher the value for me. So if I'm there to buy a book, the easier you make it for me to buy a book, the better it is for me, right? The easier it is for me to select a movie, the better it is for me. The easier it is to get support from my computer, the better it is, right? So those are the 4 forces, right? But when you look at a lot of communities, what do they do first? They look at the technology first.
Absolutely.
They deploy the technology, all the features, and there's no content. Now, if you're Intuit or if you're Microsoft, right, and you have millions and millions of users, right, you can create a community that has a likelihood of succeeding without outside content because you have so many members that somebody's going to start and you're going to have user-generated content and discussions and all of that. But in most companies, they don't have those millions of users, and so they forget to hire professional content developers to start with, you know? And so anyway, in the study we found three ways through which people failed, which is, you know, build it and they will come. And of course they come once and never come back because there's nothing in it, you know? Not invented here is the one we talked about before, is, you know, they think they have to do, you know, it's still the old marketing mentality, right? Let's get our customers together and then isolate them, you know? And so, hey, they're already happening, they're already out there, why don't you go there? They don't have that mentality, you know? So those are two of the you know, the big failures that we see.
Let me ask you another question, because you know, retail is one area where they have a set of concerns. I often encounter people either in healthcare or financial services who say, you know, this is great. However, I have regulatory issues, I have other types of legal constraints on me, but I want to do a community. Are you experiencing that kind of issue that comes up for you? And how do you deal with that?
We are, and I think there's a couple of ways to deal with it. We are, and some companies have dealt with it and know how to deal with it. And look at them. You know, for example, Eli Lilly. At some point in time, Eli Lilly decided that they were no longer going to develop drugs to cure a disease. They were going to develop drugs to provide you with an acceptable lifestyle by going through the treatment of your disease, which is a big shift, right? And at some point in time, they decided we want to be in the oncology business, right? So they started a community called Oncology on Canvas, I think it's called, and where they asked community members to express themselves, the people that were going through cancer treatment, express themselves and their lifestyle through art. You know, and then they had, you know, moving galleries, and they had contests and all of that. I mean, talk about a regulated industry, and they provided something that was valuable to those people going through that. They provided community around it, and guess what? They gleaned insights as to what it took to go through cancer treatment through art, right? So you can do it. Another way to do it, I think, which some companies do as well, is have your community set up as an editorially independent entity, right? So for example, what if Morgan Stanley were to come to O'Reilly and say, hey, could you, we're interested in a community around, you know, I don't know, retirement funding, or you know, retirement issues or something like that. You might be interested in running a community like that, where you're going to let other people access as well, and have Morgan Stanley be a sponsor.
Yeah, exactly.
And then it's at arm's length.
Yes.
You know, so that's another way of getting around that.
The other interesting thing that I find in terms of, if you look at, you know, for financial services, for example, there are places like Mint.com and Wasabi that are emerging around how to manage your finances, and they're doing this well. Financial services companies are kind of holding off because of these issues, and they're gaining a lot of market share and interest and enthusiasm, and they're allowing people to use their data in a different way. So I'm continually talking to these people, saying, as a corollary to your customers are already talking somewhere else, they're already starting to self-organize, and other businesses are coming in. So it's really something that I think everyone needs to be considering. And
the thing is, if somebody else starts, right, the benefit of being able to leverage your customer as part of the process, right, as opposed to having to do it all by yourself, right, is game changing. It's not level setting. So, you know, you have not much choice but to do it yourself as well once somebody else does it, because the economics are just,
and then you're playing catch up as well, because as you said, there's this wheel of value that starts generating with content and user generated content in mass, and it's harder to kind of
move them,
lift that. Exactly.
You know, it's a good point. I mean, I keep talking about that. I talked about the Bank of America small business community. HP has one, Microsoft has one, Intuit has one, Staples has one. Everybody has a small business community. But at the end of the day, how many small business community can you belong to? You know, at the end of the day, I do believe that there's going to be a consolidation of communities.
Yeah.
And so there is going to be one dominating small business community in which American Express and all those other companies can have access to in return for certain rules. And I mean, there has to be some give and take, right?
Yeah.
But I think that's going to be happening in the future.